Hi, folks, and welcome to Film Optimists, where we talk about all things film with a gratuitous amount of optimism. I am your co-host, Seth Boyd.
I am Megan Tierney.
And we have back on the podcast special guest, Ann Boyd.
Hello.
Here to talk about follow up on a promise we made last year around this time of doing our first sequel. We did The Thin Man last year with you on Ann, and we decided to do the movie after The Thin Man, which, as it sounds, is the next sequel. And among the most interesting sequels for a lot of reasons to me, it literally picks up right after a very apt title. And it's our holiday episode, folks. So happy holidays and enjoy this similar tale. But before we dive in, Anne, tell us a little bit about why you chose this one.
Might have been a little bit of the lazy choice to pick the sequel to the other choice. But still very fun. I do really like the Thin Man movies. I think they really hold up for the most part. Maybe not entirely, but for the most part, they really hold up. The sequel is fun to me, especially because it does take place in San Francisco, and you have not too many spoilers. Obviously, this movie's been out for a little while, so
come up on 90 years.
Yeah, you know. Having Jimmy Stewart in not his usual role is very fun.
Right. Yes, and I think we teased that last time that we're as always, folks, we're going to kind of talk through the whole story and we're going to spoil it. But yeah, Jimmy Stewart is the villain, which I'm saying at the top here because I love The Thin Man, the original one, and I can never remember who the killer is in that movie. And all of these movies, there's about 6 of them. I can never actually remember who did what. This is the only one I can remember because it is Jimmy Stewart, because it is so notably someone who's rarely a villain earlier in their career. So we'll definitely get into that a little bit.
And in these movies too, you have so many like delightful red herrings and scoundrels.
Right. Yeah. It's always a gritty situation. There are always many people who are going to benefit from the death who are having multiple and like to me, it's never convoluted. It's fun. It's complicated in a fun, follow the thread way. But Megan, your thoughts? You just saw this for the first time.
I did
today.
Yes, and I was gonna say I'd be more than happy to make this our holiday tradition. This is not a lazy choice. This is our tradition, guys.
So
perfect. happy to make it. It's so fun. It's a nice not really like an anti-holiday movie, but it's a just an alternative. I would say like a holiday movie, especially this one isn't specifically Christmas, like Seth said. It's New Year's, which there's not a lot of, not a ton, I would say, movies that are like that just kind of pepper in that it is the New Year's, and there's like stuff about resolutions, which is really fun and old timey and still in that holiday like feel, I guess. So, but second time watching the series and enjoyed it again. I agree that Jimmy Stewart was kind of the standout. Like it was very fun to watch him a lot. Like you recognize the voice. I also remember that wasn't he the villain in The Rope, Seth, which we all
kind of. He's a much more darker character in Rope. Yeah,
it had similar. Okay, so and that's what it reminded me. You get thrown back like immediately because of its similar time periods, but it was that same classic voice, of course, that is so distinguished. And but in this, it's funny because in this role, he's kind of he's a little bit like timid too, and like really bumbling kind of through life and very like boyish almost, and that was really fun to see as well. So
this is even before It's a Wonderful Life, which is for a lot of people like the Christmas holiday. Like he is very young in this. This is 1936. So he is very baby-faced compared to his more noted roles, even the ones from the early 40s. This is still notably younger.
Right.
And like you said, Rope, I think he's a full like 14 years older by the time Rope comes out. So he's a little bit slightly grizzled, but still looks very young compared to his later movies with Hitchcock. So where do we want to start with this one? Because this is a fun one with a lot of things going on.
Oh man.
And a fun thing about the Thin Man's movies is they kind of, for the large part, alternate between New York and San Francisco. So, and this is the first one to be in San Francisco. So I think it's all being Bay Area natives. There's also a special soft heart for that. So let's start with that, actually. How did you feel seeing like San Francisco in the 30s on film?
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of this was actually shot in sets in LA to make it look like that. But to me, it the interiors really felt like it. Like they nailed the old San Francisco, like the mansions and stuff.
I think so. I mean, that's kind of the word is mansions. It's like they're showing the glam, the true glamour that really is San Francisco, which is a historical past that is kind of forgotten. So it's really beautiful to kind of have it like memorialized, I guess, on film and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say it's LA. It kind of some of like the lawn scenes even, or like the garden scenes, seem a little like LA-ish, but maybe that's just because I haven't ventured into SF like lawns much, or like sprawling SF mansions much.
You have a good point. We should talk about their house because their house is insane.
Immaculate. Yeah. Just crazy. So seeing like, I think that's kind of the a bit of a treat, in like opulent holiday times, is to see these amazing, incredible architecture and of truly a bygone era, is like what it feels like. So that was amazing to see.
Just kind of that fun element too of like Nora's side of the family too.
Yeah.
This, like, very funny, dignified, who just cannot stand Nick at all for who he is. But yeah, having it set in San Francisco is very fun, and you have this kind of, same as New York, this kind of weird underbelly of the city that Nick is very comfortable being amongst and can navigate well.
Yeah.
Do we need to give a recap of the plot? Or
not necessarily. I think we'll do a little bit of one. Yeah. So for folks who heard last year, The Thin Man, these are very odd by today's standards, although movies like this came out all the time. Like, this is a murder mystery comedy. And I don't mean like not like a Knives Out, not like a parody. It just really works. Like, the jokes are really good. We talked about last time, it's kind of a rom-com except the couple's already together,
right?
And they're a great couple. We'll talk more about. But the actual murder plot here is that they come back to their hometown of San Francisco and are summoned to a family gathering that they begrudgingly go to. They're not looking forward to it. And it comes out that basically a cousin who's about Nora's age, about like a peer, is very distraught, and her husband's missing. And kind of interesting reaction of whether or not this is good news, because everyone hates the husband. And comes out that husband is planning to leave her for good and is murdered that night. So a lot of potential suspects, including his wife he's about to leave herself, some other people who were involved in blackmail scams. And then Jimmy Stewart is this interesting character who is the kind of former lover of the cousin. What's the cousin's name, dear?
Selma.
Selma, yeah, thank you. Former lover of Selma, who is still very much involved in the family and is still like around in a way that is just kind of odd. You don't typically propose marriage and still hang out when you're when they marry somebody else, but he does, and it's kind of not a secret at all. Everyone knows he still is in love with her. So we also have a Chinese nightclub that's very much plot-wise involved, with some seedy things going on there, some scams of Robert the deceased. Don't we need to get too much more into that, other than like there's a lot of potential people. There's multiple deaths, like with most of these movies, and a complicated crime that is solved in the last few moments.
It was quite complicated. Like, I think the plot kind of, it thickens, not in like a crazy way, but it's a little more than just, a woman potentially kills her husband. Like, it's not it definitely like spins a yarn much more than than that. And it brings in a lot of people too. Like, I thought that the cast there was actually, it was pretty big, actually. It was like quite a large group of people, and literal groups of people that we see come in and out and weave into these people's lives. Was it was quite large, like, really.
Yeah, it was. And I think one character we should talk about that's an interesting person in film history, William Law, who is I want to make sure I get the character's name right, Lum Ki, is a Chinese man who's playing a Chinese character in this, and it is unfortunately in that kind of 30s way a little bit of some not great speech, some kind of,
we can say a lot of not
great a lot of stereotypical, based off some bad stereotypes that are not really true about how people talk. But the actor is very interesting because this was a millionaire who just wanted to be an actor.
Oh.
So this was a millionaire reporter in San Francisco who acted for fun, did not need the money, and would just be in movies like this and had a blast doing it, by all accounts.
Mhm.
And
Unfortunately, I couldn't find too much about him.
yeah,
That was
he did die
what
pretty young.
I saw about him. Unfortunately, I don't have like the William Law biography to
Right.
back that up, but he was also in The Good Earth, which was an adaptation of the Pearl S. Buck novel.
Yeah.
Just kind of a brief role there. So
yeah, so just want to talk up front. There is a kind of caricature of a character in here, but I think he also brings some dignity to it. He's an interesting character still. Like he has some interesting motivations. It doesn't go the way you'd expect,
and ultimately saves the day. So
yes, and he's ultimately the one who saves the day.
True. Which I mean, pretty, fairly rare, I would say, to have that. I agree. Yeah, it was kind of, I know it's kind of like a bit of a bummer, or like you kind of hold your breath when you see they're going to a Chinese restaurant in 1930s in San Francisco, but at the same time it was a really amazing set and like a full performance going on of kind of like Flapper-esque girls or something like that, drinking all the way and a huge swing band in the back. So it was fun.
Really miss that era of movies, and even Casablanca, which was like much later, we talked about, has like full-on musical numbers, and a movie that's not a musical.
Yes,
and the music is really, like I said, very professional and great. One of my favorite nightclub scenes. It seems like a fun place to spend years.
Well, it's such a fun like rhythm that it gives the movie too.
Yeah.
Have the party going on at Nick and Nora's house that they
we should talk about that too.
Not really invited to.
Yeah.
What's happening at their house.
Yeah.
Then they leave for, I think it's Aunt Catherine, the matriarch.
Right.
Her home with the other elderly relatives where it's extremely somber, very quiet.
Yes.
And then back to the nightclub, which is absolutely roaring, and there's just it's one of those things that makes me really appreciate old movies and just the sheer number of extras they could fit into a scene. Of like, it looks like there's at least 100, 150 people in this nightclub.
Yeah.
That's right.
Like,
I mean, it's dozens of people just in their house party. So like a great joke too is this movie literally picks up days after the original. The original ends with them on a train back to San Francisco. This one begins with them arriving in San Francisco on that same train.
On the train.
And they're so excited to just go home and sleep. And then there is a welcome home party that is an absolute rager happening in their living room that they were unaware of. No one there seems to actually know who they are, and they just sneak in as if, and I love they just act like they also don't know who Nick and Nora are, and they're just other people who snuck into the party until they see their staff. But I think it's among the reasons this movie is very fun too, is like they're very rich.
Yes.
They're also fun. They're like, sure, I guess we're paying for this party. Fuck it, we'll keep the other party going. That's fine. They are not kicking anybody out. Going back to film history here real quick. Megan, we talked a little bit ago. You watched Young Frankenstein, right?
I did.
I bring it up because I forgot the Walk This Way joke is even older. It's in this movie with William Powell and the butler.
Oh, can you remind me of it?
The butler says "Walk this way," then William Powell starts hunching down.
Oh, yes. Oh, well,
so,
that was a classic moment too.
No, I forgot that was a callback to this movie.
Wow.
I'm sure Mel Brooks saw that.
Yeah, I mean, it was quickly, like Young Frankenstein just had so much of it. Felt like a 30s movie, which was really crazy, but that's the charm of the Thin Man series entirely, because it just feels there's a lot of like things peppered in like that, especially particularly we talked about it last time, but of course between Nick and Nora, they're just I think their characters kind of exist to provide that in the movie, and it's so welcomed, and like it's kind of like that. I feel like their coupling is the thing that kind of takes it along for me. It's not really the mystery. It's definitely their coupling and their dynamic that makes it work, and it reigned true in this one too. So that was really fun to see as well. But yeah, I was gonna say Nick and Nora certainly must be extroverts, because that would be just a horror show for me personally. As an extreme introvert, to like, I was just like, oh, that looks awful, like terrible.
Right. I can't imagine I think it's fine. I'm like, I would love to be at a point in life where I would be happy to come home to that, but I can't
Right.
imagine that ever being the case, ever being that relaxed
Yeah,
or
yeah.
wealthy.
Nonchalant.
That
Yeah,
is not
I
a
think,
huge
well, it
problem.
has a lot to do with it.
Like, they're not just be counting, just like, oh my god, how much alcohol's going through? How many glasses do I need to wash after
Yeah.
this?
That's
And
like a throwaway accent too about like, you know, got some Napoleon brandy.
yes,
On,
exactly.
and they're like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's I know we talked about this last time, but definitely keeps up the absolute casual drinking throughout the entire movie from both of them.
Right.
Because it is rare that they're not both drinking. But I think maybe you learned a little bit more about them, especially seeing them in their hometown.
Mhm.
There's already like a lot of commentary in the first movie about him not being of wealth and her being from this old money, high class world. And so you have a lot of the great interactions of street urchins and former thieves who are saying hi to him, and like the newspaper boy who's a boxer is coming up and is delighted that Nick's in town, and then there's the wealthy couple who's waving to Nora, who she recognizes. So you have more of that for sure. But did it just kind of cement how you already felt about them, Megan? Did your views on them as a couple change in any ways with this movie, or just like more of this couple?
And now that you're talking about it, what an interesting way to like evolve their storyline, kind of, I guess. Like, I thought it's a nice little like touch to add on into their second adaptation when they are home, like you say. I think that their coupling humor is so much about like just them. It's kind of them versus the world mentality, and like thematics, I guess, going on, that it I don't know, I just feel like it adds to their layers, but not necessarily, it didn't detract, in other words, from
Sure.
their love for each other or their dynamic together. Like, it enhanced they were the same level of like quick-wittedness with each other, which was really that's like the bread and butter of it all, I feel like, which I loved too.
yes.
Absolutely. Well, I think I want to get into the crime details, if that's okay. So there's some interesting kind of, obviously we have different forensics, we have a lot of different expectations for what like the police procedural part, the detective part looks, but
True.
there's some kind of, there's a little bit of an explanation of how like check fraud works in
True.
this movie, and there's some interesting kind of scams happening, and then you have the really strange, a big plot hole here is they find out that there's somebody's assuming a fake identity where they've been spying on the other people with this like rented room. So I'm curious, how did that kind of, especially on the first watch, work for you? The intrigue of this convoluted crime falling out and like the clues that are being followed.
Right. Like I said, I felt like this one maybe was a more even complicated than the last one. To be honest, I can't really remember the plot of the first one, but it's just kind of that's more of my fault than anything. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things, like, it's but this one, like, spun yarn, like I said, quite a lot more than the previous, I feel like, of kind of like seemingly random details almost, but like seeing it all come together in the end is really interesting. I think that it's kind of attuned to like also a little bit like of a tribute to a city life almost, or like how things work and how maybe like the quickness of it all. That's kind of like what it felt like to me, is the colorings of like a city, and the darkness that can happen is kind of like what I was getting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did one of those lives feel more appealing to you, the more like Nick seedier side, or the Nora's side of the family?
It's quite a difference. That dynamic was funny to see. I don't think I'm on either end of those spectrums personally. I feel very in the middle of that life.
Yeah, they don't necessarily need to be one side.
Maybe even off that scale or whatever, but fun to watch always.
Sure. So diving back in a little bit, a lot of movies from this era have a psychiatrist that are a psychologist that is often painted pretty poorly, with like a kind of a fear of psychiatry, or at least a older understanding of mental health than we have now. And I was kind of gearing up, remembering that's how I remembered the psychiatrist character, who is this family psychiatrist, to
with the Coke bottle glasses.
yes.
Oh yes.
Kind of accent happening.
Yeah, like vaguely German, but not really German accent, a Jungian or something. Um, however, he's the family psychiatrist to Selma specifically, the in North side of the family, the very wealthy family, and he's basically kind of seems like is primarily just giving her sleeping pills to keep her calm.
Mhm.
And it just on this viewing, just done, I was like, well, that is a real thing still. There's still is a lot
Oh
of
man.
family psychiatrists who are either the person is willingly wanting that, or in many cases being suggested by whoever holds the actual purse strings in that family to be keeping one particular family member of the family
Oh
asleep
man.
a lot of the day. It's like, oh, that was a little more hard hitting than I expected. And he's not necessarily a villainous character,
Mm-mm.
but he's certainly questionable. And I
Right.
think we have like the chief of police being like, oh, he's been involved in a lot of cases.
Do you think something that's fun too in this one is we see a lot of Nick kind of smoothly navigating kind of the underworld
Yes.
that he's used to and dealing with
Mhm.
tougher characters and seedier people. But it's very fun seeing Nora kind of do something very similar with her family, where she's able to very smoothly handle these kind of older, stuffier relatives who she's not necessarily like friendly with, but she can like kind of appease and still achieve what she wants. Like when I think it's Selma's been basically drugged because she's
True.
a wreck.
Right.
And Aunt Catherine just insists, like, oh no, she needs to rest. Like, no one needs to bother her. And Nora just is like, oh no, I'll just be there when she wakes up. Like, I'm going to go. Like, I'll be in the room, but don't worry. I'm not going to bother her. I know how this works. Like,
Yeah. And it's funny because like Nick has no interest in even trying to play that game. He is almost hostile in his distaste. But he knows he can get away with it, and partially because the room doesn't actually hear him. But
well, he knows like there's nothing he can do that's gonna make them like him. So,
and I think he also does have a kind of moral thing of like, Selma's in trouble. Why are we going through like we're really gonna eat and have dessert first and go to the library for cigars before we can actually talk about the fuck we're here? Like, you really make us go through all of this before the actual reason.
When all the men will just fall asleep anyway.
Right. Like you're making her play piano for all the older women when she's distraught that her husband is missing.
Yeah.
So
that's fun.
I think it's interesting. But you're right. I think you definitely see her navigating her wit and capabilities, which are not the same as Nick's.
Yes, but complementary.
Yeah.
And Nora and Selma's relationship is very sincere. Like it's quite a sincere, touching, moment of these two young ladies navigating crazy worlds of the aunt being insane and like men falling asleep and being old and just weird. So like that was really sweet, I think. And it I mean, it's fun. Like it shows what a true dynamic of a family too, of the youngins versus the stuffy old, your stuffy old relatives or whatever. And hey, this movie's like we said, 90 years old, and relatable, totally. So that's very fun to see.
So another thing that we were thinking of in different terms on this viewing. There's been a lot of like retroactively calling a character maybe something under more current terms. But Jimmy Stewart as David is kind of an incel. He's kind of an outright hating. Like he has this, basically he's the one who has felt shunned by his former lover.
Oh yes.
And I don't think we made this clear. Sorry, it's not just that he killed David, the husband. He was framing her.
Robert is.
Yeah, sorry, Robert. He was killing the man who Selma left him for, killed him, but also is intending to frame Selma so he can watch her hang, and kills two, I think, or three other people in trying to achieve this. So it's a pretty heinous, very hateful, involved scheme. Also, like so many of the whodunit mysteries, that always comes down to money. This is kind of a unique one. It is purely revenge.
And it is very fun having Jimmy Stewart just absolutely unraveled, just sweating sweat.
Those last like 10 minutes where he's really lost it is great.
Yeah.
The psychiatrist, something, oh, that's right, he was crazy the whole time.
Right. Feelings of like his incompetence, I guess, is very fun. And I think like quite a statement back in the day. I mean, 30s and Nick's this very competent like person, and to see someone kind
Mhm.
of like bumbling through it is that was something I noted too, is like they, you know, not all the women are like ding dongs, of course, and not all the men are evil or so plotting or so cunning or something like that. Like they have a
Right.
we have a big swatch of humanity here, and it doesn't feel very gendered in terms of like, well, this guy's the murderer and he's crazy and blah blah blah, or you know, the woman's revengeful something or other.
Right.
And none of that goes on in here. I remember that from the last one as well, like that didn't happen in the previous one. So if you're looking for something alternative from stuff that, which I feel like is kind of like a trope of murder, could be a
Mhm.
trope of like the murder genre in general, which I think sometimes happens in America. I think this one adamantly and actively like is not. So that's really nice to see too.
Right. Well, and I always do like too. I think there's definitely a class statement here too of like David is the very, very old money highbrow money who also just went completely insane and killed a lot of people. You know, he is not the guy who's hanging out at these seedy nightclubs. He's
True.
not the guy's Nick knows,
Mm-hmm.
but he's
Mm-hmm.
way worse
Mm-hmm.
ultimately. Talking about some of the other characters here, I thought the character of Polly is really interesting. She's
Mm-hmm.
the dancer and kind of lead entertainment at the club that we go to.
You have that twist with her and Phil also.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
you have her
mm-hmm.
being very smart here because she's involved in a kind of pretty complicated scheme where she's been working with the guy who's ironically named Dancer, though she's a dancer who's the like nightclub owner to scam the deceased Robert, but she's also planning to rip him off with who her boss thinks is her brother, but is actually her husband. So
Right.
I liked her being smart and confident, you know, and
Uh-huh.
confident in pulling off this thing nearly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you have some very interesting characters. We have another great lug of a cop who's pretty competent, but is also just kind of mad about how complicated the case is. That's always a great
Yeah.
trope for me. He's actually
Mm-hmm.
kind of happy the detective is there because like what the hell's going on, and a pretty similar but West Coast version of who we have in the first movie.
Yeah, just kind of stomping around in a trench coat.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Barking
Yelling
Exactly.
at
orders.
Yes.
people.
Right.
Yeah.
Classic stuff.
Mhm. It
Never
it
gets old.
feels a little like, and not even in a bad way, but the cast is very like characters almost, or like
Yeah.
I wouldn't say cartoony, I would say like character-y
Yeah.
versions of you know, cop bad guy quirky couple kind of thing is what like I
Yeah.
feel about it, but not in an insult. Like I said, like I think it's just really fun to watch basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think they all get great lines. Like everyone
Mhm.
is funny in this.
Mhm.
And they all have like a very strong personality that's maybe limited but clearly defined, and they're able to have a lot of fun, I think, with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to talk about the best, speaking well, as Seth and Anne are holding their adorable Cooper on their lap in the moment, we have to talk about once again the most incredible dog actor I've had the pleasure of
Yes.
watching. I must be the same dog, I assume.
It is the same dog. Yeah.
Incredible, like circus dog. Basically, they get these circus
Yeah.
dogs for these movies to do these incredible tricks, and he has this little a little mini plot line too of
Yeah.
that his girl is maybe stepping out with another dog. So that
Yeah.
was very cute, very cutesy, fun to watch.
Yeah.
But just the talent of that dog is something to write home about.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
good. And you have such great little slapstick,
Yeah.
basically, too, with him eating the note, I think, that's pitched through the
Hmm.
window, and it's
Yes.
a whole thing. Get him to drop it. And,
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's some great classic trying to chase the dog. I think there's two couple things in this movie that happened pretty close together that felt so relatable, and trying to act like you don't notice the dog
Right.
so you can get the dog. Like Cooper will hide when it's time to go out. So trying to trick him to come out so he can put his harness on him is like a daily occurrence. So
Oh my
him just
God.
like nonchalantly
Yes.
so we get the note, and then Ass in this case being way too on to them
Mhm.
is very relatable.
I know.
In the scene where they're finally able to go to bed, and then one of them wants to actually start talking now, and
Yes, yes.
Nora is just like,
Uh-huh.
"Can you reach that glass of water? I don't need it. I just want to make sure you can reach it." And then
Yeah.
realizing, he's like, "All right, we're clearly about to have breakfast. Let's just I'll get up and start making it."
I know.
We've all been there, especially after a long day that's going to become a little bit longer. But I thought that was very cute.
Yes.
Very genuine.
And always sweet. Like they're never, never a note of. I mean, it's a little bit, like we say, cutesy and stuff, and like meant to be funny. But I love that it's really sweetly dealt with, like all those little dealings, which is nice. You don't need to see a bunch of crap all the time, like and married couples and stuff like that. So that's nice.
It's not a divorce and get back together story,
right?
you never have a doubt that they're gonna stay together. There's never an infidelity or anything like that.
They're never like cruel to each other.
Right.
It's banter and teasing, but like
they're
over heels. It's adorable.
Yeah, their New Year's resolutions to each other is he's saying like, you have to start bickering at me because you're far too kind and you look far too pretty in the morning. Just
not enough nagging.
Exactly.
The word like cute kept coming up for me, and not even like cute sounds kind of like demeaning, I thought, but I was like, it's not in a bad way. Like, so I love it. The dynamic is really sweet and cute in that kind of way.
Well, should we move on to kind of closing statements and recommendations?
Sure.
And closing thoughts. Yeah, do you want to start for us?
Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, closing
thoughts.
Go ahead. Sorry.
How do you guys feel? So, how does this one compare to the first one for you? Is there one better than the other?
Glad you asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked both of them. It felt like a really seamless continuation of the first movie.
Yeah.
Partially because it takes place like almost immediately after the first one wraps up, so it almost feels like the pace is just kind of still going.
Yeah.
And as well, it's called After the Thin Man just because it does literally take place after the first movie. It's the Thin Man, and it's the Thin Man case.
Right.
And I think there is a little throwaway line from like a newspaper boy or a reporter or somebody shouting like, "You gonna give us another Thin Man, Nick?" Like, a reference directly to that first movie. Idea what you're watching, I guess, in case you forget. But yeah, it almost felt like a really seamless continuation of the first movie in terms of pacing and banter and our characters.
And it's just the same director.
And it's the same director. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it almost kind of in like the the brain rot of like the streaming day and age. Almost felt like binging a Netflix show or something.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, now the next one's queued up, starting, and 5 seconds later, and we just rolled it in.
Yeah.
And I mean that it sounds terrible, but I mean that in a good way. There's great continuity, and it almost feels like it could be one movie, like one piece. Yeah.
I think they're just as good as each other. I think I'm a little bit more fond of this one because it is against Cisco and it's Jimmy Stewart. But like, I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. I think a lot of purists say the first one is, but like, I just have such a soft spot for this movie. And like, I like all the sequels as well, but these first two are just so special to me. They do start to climb a little bit, like, but they're never bad as far as I'm concerned.
I love that. I love that this is your guys' holiday choice. That makes me really happy.
It says something about us. I don't know what. What about you, Megan? Having seen both these movies, did you prefer one over the other?
And you described the continuity really well. Like that thing of like, it could have been on a streaming service where you just watch it right after the other. My like modern example was we just watched Home Alone and then Home Alone 2. And those are literally like carbon copies of each other. And like they almost have the same lines, like in the second one, which is it's a little like too on the nose almost. So the continuity of like these two together is really nice. I think I'm remembering like the impact that the first one had on me too, that again, like bringing it back to Nick and Nora, they're so distinct, I guess, and so seeing them like for the first time is really exciting, and like seeing their dynamic unfold is like the joy that's also in this one as well. But I think seeing them for the first time is like really fun and different. I'm sure, so it's kind of special.
I think they also get involved of actually trying to solve the case a lot faster in this one. And that can be like pro or con, depending on, because like if you're watching like a Sherlock Holmes movie, and it's like the third one, you don't want to see him become Sherlock Holmes. You don't want to go through the song dance. You want to see him on the case. In the first one, you are introduced to these characters, and he's retired, and he's already kind of putting some pieces together. But it's a little bit of a while before he's actually, all right, I'm actually going to solve this thing,
True.
Whereas this one, even though he says that, they both get involved pretty quick compared to the first one, I think.
I think you're right, and I think it's just because it's like, okay, you remember these characters? Great. Here's what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Who are these people? Where are they? Why are they here?
Right.
What's their relationship?
Yeah.
Which the first movie does really effectively.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have to take the time to do that when it's like, hey, you remember that movie you saw you really liked? This is that also.
Yeah.
We got you.
All these movies were shot just like in a matter of weeks too, and I kind of miss a movie being made, and it wasn't like it was shot in a matter of weeks because everyone was working like 100-hour work weeks. It was shot pre a lot of union codes, but still like efficiently and ethically, from my understanding, and just like I do miss the idea of like, because this is largely a few sets, some locations, and there's no CGI, there's no big special effects here. There's choreography, and you be pretty fast with a big crew and do that.
Circus dogs.
Great. Yeah, exactly. So dog training. That had to be the most complicated part. Actually.
Seth Boyd of Film Optimists podcast calling for the return of the studio system.
Exactly.
I know.
I mean, they had some.
You gotta say you're joking.
I'm joking. Yes.
I mean, the sheer amount of people too is just kind of like pretty unexistent nowadays, or like especially just this big cast, everybody interacting together. It is truly extras, not insane computer people. So it looks great.
Yeah.
And it really feels like New Year's Eve, like it feels festive, I guess, in that sense.
Yes.
Right. I think that kind of covers my closing thoughts, actually, unless you two have anything else you want to add.
I think that's it for me.
Okay.
I just like that it was very like opulent. So if you're craving a little bit of 1930s opulence this New Year's Eve, let Thin Man be your choice, I would say. Both of them really, but especially this one.
Because seeing their house and seeing like the old family home that's there in San Francisco, and like all that old incredible woodwork and massive doors and all that, the mansion, it looks like,
and then the nightclub.
It is quite opulent in a fun way for sure. In a different way than watching a kind of what an opulent house looks like now. Like I have a problem with those movies, but there's kind of a different vibe. It's very often like the very sleek, rich house, and we're really going to talk about class, and often the movie fails to cash that check. And I feel like these say a lot and look great.
Well, and you have the fun too of like Aunt Catherine's like manor, which is this beautiful great thing, and then you have Nick and Nora's also manor, but very sleek, up to date, beautiful,
completely different look. Yeah.
They're on trend.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to recommendations then. And as our guest,
yes, sure. So my recommendation kind of came to mind with Jimmy Stewart being, I don't want to say playing against type because he didn't always play golden boys in all his roles, but my recommendation for this episode is Notorious by Alfred Hitchcock.
Okay.
Out in 1946, because one of our starring actors in this movie is Cary Grant, playing a much more kind of complicated, maybe not entirely good guy in this one.
Yeah.
Who's, I think, a spy.
He's a spy, yep.
Yes. He's playing with Ingrid Bergman, who is stunning and wonderful and just pure charisma on screen. And it's a little romantic, but in a really warped Hitchcock way. So very not Nick and Nora on the screen, but another kind of not whodunit, but it's a thriller and it's complicated and fun and twisty.
The aftermath of World War II is heavily involved. This could be a fun episode for us to do. It's a really good movie. Yeah. but yeah, definitely not Cary Grant as we think of Cary Grant.
Yes, I think of Cary Grant being almost Bugs Bunny like in his roles, and he's very much not doing that. So
right. Yeah. This is not Bring Up Baby.
No.
Megan, you would like that one with your Ingrid Bergman kick as well.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I've heard of this one, definitely.
That's the first movie we saw together in theaters. Shout out to the Pacific Film Archive in Berkeley.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually, Claude Rains is in that too, also from Casablanca.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Very fun.
Do you want to go next for us, Megan?
Sure, I'm gonna like deter us a little bit because I have a bit of I have a special recommendation this time, which I'm really excited to talk about because recently my mom and I were able to go to this screening of a movie at our local library. So shout out to our local library, and it's called
Oh,
Fremont.
really?
Yes. So
Okay. Very
this is a
cool.
film that made it to Sundance and everything, a film by the filmmakers named Babak Jalali about
Okay.
this Afghan woman that has moved to Fremont, like literally the Bay Area, and they mentioned Fremont. She works in San Francisco in SF, like at the original fortune cookie factory. Like that's where
Oh, yeah,
it
yeah,
picks
yeah.
up. And she is able, which like a little fun fact is that fortune cookies are like from San Francisco. They were invented there by certainly an American person. Like they're not, and to say that they're not authentically Chinese or anything like that. So they're very
Right.
like Americanized and stuff like that. And she gets the opportunity to start writing fortunes in the cookies.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's really really fun. There's amazing cameos in it. Boots Riley is a fun cameo in it.
Oh, wow.
It was so much fun. And it was it was really heartwarming. Like, I went not knowing much expectations for the movie at all. Um, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. My mother really enjoyed it. And the screening was like the first that I've had, certainly like post COVID, but certainly post like even going to school and stuff like that. And it was very like dry humor, and the
Mm.
audience was like loving it. People were laughing, and so it was
Oh,
really
that's
nice.
great.
The community feel was there, and the main actress is Anita Wali Zada was at the screening, which was
Oh,
amazing.
very cool.
So,
That's awesome.
it's kind of like her true story. She was a refugee from Afghanistan, so it was like a true story about her transition, kind of. So I was really really pleased to see it. It's available now streaming like in most places.
Okay.
So if you can check it out, it's like I said, Sundance picked it up. I think it was in South by Southwest as well. And it's doing well, doing pretty good.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for telling us about that. I'm excited to see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Jeremy
We'll
Allen
go
White
into
is in it as well.
Oh,
Hey.
of the bear fame.
Yeah, I know. It was surprising, basically.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'm glad you told us about that because I have not heard of that. So I'm excited to now have that on my radar.
And to be honest, I only heard about it because of my library. So, like I said, shout out
Wow.
to your local library. They may have some really cool. My Fremont was pretty good. Like they've had screenings before as well. So take advantage. This was totally free. So it was amazing. It was really fun.
Very cool. Yes. Cannot support the libraries enough. I always happy to do that.
And now,
Well, bringing it back to murder, my pick is Knives Out from a
oh
couple years
yes.
ago, the
Mhm.
Ryan Johnson film, and this is another. This is maybe a more classic Who Done It. This is the family manor. This is everyone's a suspect, and most of them are related. And this is a peculiar detective coming in to solve it, and it's Benoit Blanc, and it's played by Daniel Craig. And this was just a really fun real big revival for the franchise, for like not just the franchise, sorry, for the whole medium of whodunits. I feel like we had a couple fun spin-offs of this that have been inspired from it. We've had the sequel, and that sounds like there's been another one. But this is honestly just a very fun, smart, complicated crime movie that I think the whole family can enjoy. And it's very fun, especially seeing Daniel Craig as the detective here, and many great actors, including Jamie Lee Curtis and always one of my favorites, Michael Shannon, but also Chris Evans here, and seeing Chris Evans and Daniel Craig not in their franchises, not as Bond and Captain America, just playing someone so wildly different. Daniel Craig is a great, frankly, Foghorn Leghorn, full on deep fried Southern accent, not his typical British accent, and is great and is still kind of weird and vulnerable in a kind of old school detective way. Is not necessarily the I'm going to catch the killer with my hands. Is almost a little bit more akin to Perot. It's slightly fey and strange,
Mhm.
but very smart. Yeah, having all these franchise people being in something very different is very fun to watch. So holds up.
Great modern example, like you said, that I think you may have picked this for your like top 5, I think. One of the years, maybe the year it
maybe.
came
I
out.
know it's on our Thanksgiving read list. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
certainly.
it's a great one.
It is. I agree.
We did get to do this, I think, with Thanksgiving with some relatives when it came out, and that was a pretty fun
That was pretty
watch.
fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. That's like,
We'll
I'm
ruin
sure
some Thanksgivings, but it'll be great for most. Yeah.
that's how the director wanted it to go. I'm sure.
Exactly. Of course, Anna de Armas is fantastic in there too.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Great. Well, folks, this is, as we said, our holiday episode. So happy
Mhm.
holiday, whatever that is. Happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Solstice.
Solstice, Yule.
And Yule.
There we go.
I know we're missing some, so our apologies. But happy holidays to you. Our
Mhm.
next episode will probably be Megan and I doing our top 5 movies that we watched.
Oh, yes.
Keeping up that tradition. But thank you for
man.
listening.
Yes,
And of course,
happy-
thank you so much for coming on to talk about another great classic.
Like I said, I'm happy to make this our holiday tradition because Anne, you're delightful, and these films are delightful.
I mean, I'm not opposed.
All right, folks, take
All right.
care. Happy holidays.